to Zarathustra Summer. This section, we're going to go over the Tightrope Walker, the Zarathustra encounters when he gets into the town. So, um, the prologue, sort of before we get to the Tightrope Walker, we see Zarathustra messing around with some kind of zoological rhetoric to do with what I think has been often misinterpreted as a simplistic view of evolution, which Nietzsche is trying to argue for the next step. You kind of have ape, man, and Superman, and I think this is simplistic, and I'll show you why in particularly in this section. But we do have a theme of overcoming, which could be, let's say, a kind of reinterpretation of what we kind of through Darwin and more scientifically informed understandings could be some sort of evolutionary process that Zarathustra is kind of coming down to the mountain to, in this somewhat kind of missionary tone, to announce the word of the next step of some sort of seemingly evolutionary process. But it's only seemingly evolutionary because it gets more complicated. So when he says when he announces to the townspeople that he's going to teach the Superman, he uses a lot of, and I think I find myself analyzing two things a lot in Zarathustra. One is rhetoric to do with like man, animal, beast, ape, these sorts of comparisons of man and his relationship to animal, his kind of ontological relationship to animal, and also a lot of rhetoric to do with verticality, up and down. There's a lot of Zarathustra descends from the mountain to the townspeople, and he comes across a tightrope walker in this section who is walking, and spoiler alert, he falls, so he sort of goes down, and there's a lot of rhetoric about going down in this section. So I'll go through it in a bit more detail. But he says, "What is the ape to men? A laughing stock or a painful?" Gotta turn the page. Painful embarrassment, and just so shall man shall be to the Superman, a laughing stock or a painful embarrassment. You have made your way from worm to man, and much in you is still worm. Once you were apes, and even now man is more of an ape than any ape. This is almost kind of like a jester, like tone he's taking. He's kind of saying, look at you humans, you think you're above man, but now man is even more of an ape than an ape. Although he has congratulated humans for becoming more than worms, but to call yourself more than a worm isn't really a compliment. It's a kind of, so he's really messing around, I think, and I think this is kind of the point of what Zarathustra is doing a lot, from a kind of rhetorical perspective, is he's really trying to undermine perhaps a too easily assumed sense of superiority for man. These men he's meeting in a town, they've assumed their civilized, enlightened, maybe highness too easily. And this misassumption of highness is also, for Zarathustra, something which, in order to escape this kind of arrogance, we could say, the body needs to be reinterpreted. The body needs to be re-evaluated in a way which distinguishes itself, I think, from, let's say, the kind of typical, somewhat Gnostically inclined, Christian-informed, although I know Christianity is not all in the same in agreement when it comes to things to do with the body. But certainly Nietzsche throughout his whole work is attacking the more Gnostically inclined versions of Christianity, and perhaps the kind of more abstract morality which seems to come along with more Gnostic views. So he says, the Superman is the meaning of the earth. Let your will say, the Superman shall be the meaning of the earth. And then later on he says, once the soul looked contemptuously upon the body, and then this contempt was the supreme good. The soul wanted the body lean, monstrous, famished. So the soul thought to escape from the body and from the earth. This soul was itself lean, monstrous, and famished, and cruelty was the delight of the soul. It's hard to know what to make sometimes of Nietzsche's view of the body. Like, what's he really saying about the body? What is it a simple hedonism? Is it a simple kind of emphasis on sensual life over ethical life? It's difficult to know, but I think that what he's definitely doing is that he's undermining the supposed hierarchy. I think this is what a lot of the rhetoric in Zarathustra so far has been about, undermining the supposed hierarchy or the assumed hierarchy of man over animal, undermining the assumed hierarchy of spirit, morality over the body, over life. And that's maybe how we could read this. He's undermining the idea that the body is somehow of less, or has nothing to say, or isn't kind of part of our understanding of ethics itself. So the next section is probably the most interesting section, in my opinion, in the entire, definitely in the prologue, which is the tightrope walker. So as I was saying before, when Zarathustra goes into this town, there is a tightrope walker who walks over a tightrope, and he falls. And just to give you the kind of background of this, he falls, and he's on the ground, and he dies. And Zarathustra is kind of the only one who respects him. He's the only one who recognizes him as someone who's done something worth recognizing. And Zarathustra later on brings him to a graveyard, or he brings him to be buried, I think, in a forest. But it's noticeable that the townspeople just look at this tightrope walker as a bit of a clown. They think he's a bit of an idiot, and they kind of say, well, they don't really get him. So I suppose Zarathustra relates to the tightrope walker insofar as that he's also misunderstood by the townspeople and so on. So I think the best line probably in Zarathustra, which is, man is a rope fastened between animal and superhuman, stretched out over an abyss. So in this section, man is also referred to kind of ontologically as a bridge. He's not really a point. He's not really a goal. He's a bridge. So he is this rope. Human life is this tightrope walk, and the abyss is important here, because I suppose in order to do the Superman, you have to stare into the abyss, and this is an important kind of directional sense of ambivalence, because again, to play around with these sense of linearity and hierarchy, which we get from evolution. Man was once a worm, then a monkey, then a man. In this sense, man is a bridge, and in order to become more, in order to get to the other side of the tightrope walk, he has to look down, not up. He's not looking up toward the transcendent gods. He's looking down. He's got vertigo. He's looking at this abyss. So Nietzsche's really trying to kind of undermine this this assumed sense of verticality, which we've which was common at the time. So where am I? There's a lot of rhetoric here which shows this undermining of this, or I should say, shows this directional ambivalence. I'm not going to read out all of it, but just certain sections where he emphasizes the sort of value of going down. He says, I love him who lives for knowledge and who wants to know, who wants knowledge that one day the Superman may live, and thus he wills his own downfall. I love him who works and invents that he may build a house for the Superman and prepare earth, animals, and plants for him, for thus he wills his own downfall. I love him who throws golden words in advance of his deeds and always performs more than he promised, for he wills his own downfall. I love him whose soul is over full, so that he forgets himself and all things are in him, thus all things become his downfall. I love him who is of a free spirit and a free heart, thus his head is only the bowels of his heart, but his heart drives him to his downfall. So this is like this he's placing a lot of value on falling, on going down, and this is very different to Christianity because, well, I know, of course, like we should remain open to how you interpret the fall. But nonetheless, there is a theme in Christianity of the fall, and it's this moment of sin, it's this moment of corruption and so on. And Nietzsche's sort of, I guess he's sort of saying, no, this fall is the moment of highest value, nearly, or perhaps it is a moment which must be embraced or reevaluated in some way. And we could also say something like, if you want to become the Superman, if you want to truly embrace a higher vertical ascension, you have to look down. You have to be willing to fall. And perhaps these civilized men he's encountering want to be higher, civilized man, above animal, but they don't want to look down. They don't want to risk. They don't want to look into the abyss. They don't want to have to fall, which in a sense inhibits them becoming anything. And he says, especially this is relevant to our theme of the civilizing principle, he says, they have something of which they are proud. What is it called that makes them proud? They call it culture. It distinguishes them from the goat herds. Therefore, they dislike hearing the word contempt spoken of them, so I shall speak to their pride. So I shall speak to them of the most contemptible man, that is, the ultimate man, the last man. In this translation, it's the ultimate man, the last man, which we will get into in the next video. I just had some more notes. So, yeah, it's kind of as I was saying before. Zarathustra is realizing that what we've assumed to make us higher, above animals, actually now drags us down. It's a lie. It's lost its capacity to move us up. We must learn to let go of certain assumptions, and I think this is maybe another way we can interpret the fall, because like the fall, or like the kind of grace of this fall, this going down, so this willingness to go down, and this tightrope walker, which is showing I'm willing to fall and go down, is that he's saying, the assumptions that and the values which we have inherited, which we've assumed, that give us a sense of ontological hierarchy to animals, give us a sense of highness, maybe give us a sense of we are civilized and those people are the barbarians, and so on. Give us these sort of distinctions. These values no longer work. These assumptions no longer, kind of within the theme of the death of God. These distinctions no longer ring true. They no longer actually mean anything. And so what we're left without our distinctions actually having any real kind of substantial value, is that we're left with the assumptions that we are higher, a sort of arrogance. And perhaps this arrogance is the thing that needs to be let go of, in order to actually pursue higherness, actually pursue a real distinction between us and animals, actually overcome. So what we're letting go of, which is making us fall, could be those assumptions that have led us to believe we are higher, which no longer ring true, which no longer have any kind of ethical substance to them, and so on and so forth. That would at least be my interpretation of what he means by the fall. It's not like a hedonism. It's not like he's saying just consume, just seek pleasure, just be animals. Why not? Like human pursuits and culture and civilization is all stupid. I think he's just saying it's the arrogance and the false assumptions which are holding us back, which is and thus those things are making us actually more like animals. And in order to overcome that, we need to actually kind of let go of these assumptions and fall into the abyss. Maybe, if you disagree, leave a comment. So yeah, that's it for this video. We'll deal with the last man in the next video. Yeah, if you haven't subscribed, subscribe, and see you later.